In this lesson, we're going to begin factoring by grouping, and typically when you use this method, there are 4 terms available. You can rearrange terms if you want to, but most of the times it's unnecessary. And also we're going to look at greatest common factor within that, and also if it has nothing to do with factoring by grouping. So for this first example right here, we have 4 terms. We place the first 2 in parentheses, place a plus sign between the parentheses, and then the last 2 terms in the last set of parentheses. And then we look at our first 2 terms. Both of these terms have at least 2 x's in common. This has 3 x's, that has 2. They both have at least 2. So we're going to factor out the greatest common factor, which is x squared. Now, when we do that, we would say if we took 2 x's away from these 3 x's, we're left with 1 x. And if we took 2 x's away from here, we're left with a positive 4. And we can actually double check this by using the distributive property. X squared times x is x cubed. X squared times 4 is 4x squared. So it's the same thing. We've just rewritten it in a different manner. Bring down our positive sign. In this set of parentheses, both of these terms have a 3 in common. So we can factor out a 3. And when we do that, we're left with a positive x plus 3 divides into 12 4 times. We're not finished factoring just because we have a plus sign in between the 2 sets of parentheses. So we would look at this first group and look at the second group and say, what do these 2 groups have in common? Well, they both have an x plus 4 in common. When we factor an x plus 4 out of the first set of terms, we're left with x squared. When we take it out of the second set, we're left with a positive 3. And then that's how we know that we're finished, is because we do not have a plus sign, a positive sign, or a negative sign between these 2 sets of parentheses. So this would be your final answer. As far as order is considered, it doesn't matter if you write the x squared plus 3 first and then the x plus 4, or leave it like this. In this next example, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to write the first 2 terms in parentheses, always put a plus sign, and then the last 2 terms. Now the negative sign will go with the 3c on the inside. In the first group, we can factor out a b, and that would leave us, if we took a b away, we're left with a c plus 8. And again, you can distribute to check this. The second case, we can factor out a 3. Now if your highest degree term has a negative sign in front, it's probably safer to go ahead and take the negative out as well. So we're going to take the negative 3 out. You can put places as a plus a negative if you want to, but I would just go ahead and place it as a negative. When I factor negative 3 out, I'm left with a positive c and a positive 8, because negative 3 divides into negative 24 positive 8 times. Again, we're not finished because we have a minus sign between those 2 parentheses. So out of each group has the c plus 8 in common. And we factor that out, we are now left with b minus 3. And we take the c plus 8 and factor it out. And that would be our final answer. And if we wanted to check this, we could multiply this, and it should give us back to our original problem. This next case is similar to the last case. Place your first 2 terms together in a set of parentheses. Always put a plus sign, and then the last 2 terms. Now that negative sign does go with the 4y. Out of the first 2 terms, a 5 divides into 20 into 15, so we can take a 5 out, and they both have at least 1 x. That would leave us with 5 times 4 is 20. The x is taken care of, but we also need the y. Minus 5 times 3 is 15, and the x is already taken care of. Again, in the second set of parentheses, our highest degree term has a negative sign in front, so we're going to take a negative out, but otherwise there's nothing else in common with a 4y and a 3, so we're going to take a negative 1 out. And it would help you to write the number so that when you completely factor, that 1 will be there. When I take a negative 1 out or divide by negative 1, I'm left with a positive 4y and a negative 3. Now each group in this case has 4y minus 3 in common. And when I take 4y minus 3 away, I'm left with a 5x and a negative 1. And that's where the 1, writing the 1 down, will help you. This is the final answer. Now in all types of factoring, no matter what type factoring it is, if you can take out a term that's common to all terms in this case right here, all 4 terms, it doesn't matter if it's 4 terms, 3 terms, or 2 terms, you need to do that first. And in all the previous examples, there was nothing we could take out of all 4 terms. But in this case, there is. A 2 will divide into 4, 6, and 8, and they all have at least one a in common. So we open our parentheses, and then we go down the line. 2 times 2 gives us 4, a times a is a squared. We also need the b squared c. Minus 2 times 3 is 6, the a is taken care of, write the b squared c down. Minus 2 times 2 is 4, the a is taken care of, we need the c left behind, and then 2a times 4 will give us 8a. But we're not necessarily finished there. We still have 4 terms, and we need to check to see if we can factor those terms by grouping. So we're going to put the first 2 in parentheses, put a plus sign, put the last 2 in parentheses. So in the first case, and we'll bring 2a down at the end if we need to. In the first case, we have b squared c in common, which is our greatest common factor. That means we're left with a 2a minus 3 when that's divided out. In this case, I'm going to take a 2 out, but I'm also going to take a negative sign out because my highest degree is a negative. So that leaves me with a positive c, which if I multiplied it, that would get me back to negative 2c, and a negative 2. Now, in each of these groups, there's nothing in common. There's nothing obviously in common like there has been in the previous problems. So that means it could not factor any further. Now, it did factor, but the factoring occurred up on this level right here, and it did not occur at any other time. So that would be your final answer.